Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Spotlight with Scientists in School. My name is Betty Bakopoulos, and I am thrilled to be having a conversation today with Peter Soroye. He is a conservation biologist and a PhD candidate at the University of Ottawa. He is studying the effects of climate change and habitat loss on our pollinators, specifically the bumblebee, and his groundbreaking research has even caught the attention of Leonardo DiCaprio. So let's head on over and join the conversation with Peter. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Spotlight. I am joined today by Peter Soroye. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
This is really exciting. I stumbled across your website, and it was this one sentence that you had: can humans get their act together? And I thought, okay, I need to have a conversation with Peter. So thank you for doing this. You are a conservation biologist at the University of Ottawa. What does that mean?
Yeah, so conservation biology is the study of two big things, I guess. One, like what's going on, what are humans doing to the planet around us and the animals on it, and what can we do about it to help these animals survive in the face of all these threats and hopefully recover some of the, some of the declines that they've already experienced. So it's a lot of people think that conservation biology is pretty depressing because you're looking at what's going on wrong, like in the world all the time, and all these miserable things. But I think it's ends up being really optimistic because you're studying animals you really care about, and you're tackling questions that you think are really important. And at the end of the day, you get to look back at what you've done, and you get to say, I've like helped develop a solution to make the world a little bit better. So
that's perfect. That's what I like, right? By the end of it, it can't be doom and gloom. There's always got to be a silver lining somewhere, something that we can do. What would you tell a kid is the best part of your job?
Oh man, I think the fulfillment is like a really big thing. Like I grew up like loving the outdoors, loving nature, loving like all these like crazy and wild like animals and plants and everything. And so it's really cool to be able to work with them a little bit. I do mostly like data science on the computer, but being able to like help save these things is really cool. And then of course, like as a scientist, you get to travel to like conferences and exotic places. You get to do field work in really cool environments, and the people around you are so dope as well. It's just really inspiring, a really inspiring group of people.
You mentioned something. I spoke to an entomologist once, and that's exactly what he said. He loved his job because he got to travel the world, and it was pretty cool. And sometimes somebody else paid for it, so that was even a bonus.
Yeah, that's a big perk. As a student, like I've been able to go to the UK and South Africa and all over the US, and it's all the university pays for it, so it's really wild.
Yeah, that is a nice perk for sure. Now, did you always love science when you were little? Like, what drew you to science?
Yeah, I always really enjoyed it. I loved like, flipping through National Geographic magazines, and I used to go to the library and take out every single book on dinosaurs or plants or animals. And then I remember there was this one series of books that was like really, I think, looking back on it, really pivotal for like me getting into science. It was like they were called Horrible Science, I think, and they were really cool, and they always had like little experiments you could do, of like little science experiments you could do at home, and it brought science from like something that was like kind of foreign and really like big into something that I could just do like in my sink at home, or I could do like in the backyard. And that was really, got me really like knowing that I could do science. And I think that played a big role looking back on it.
It's always that feeling. That's what we love about our workshops too, right? You expose kids to these experiments, and when if they have that feeling like, oh, I can do this, and then science becomes like a real possibility, it's pretty exciting. Now, you are studying the effects of climate change and habitat loss on pollinators, and especially bumblebees. Bumblebees, they're where it's at. Everybody loves bumblebees. I think in the insect world, they're like the top of the cuteness scale. I have 3 girls, and there's like bumblebees on their sweatshirts. They have bumblebees on their mugs. You don't see cockroaches on anybody's t-shirt these days. Why do you think we are so drawn to bumblebees?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, they're just so adorable, right? They're so cute. I like to call them the teddy bears of the sky because
Oh, I love that.
they're big, they're fuzzy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember, and I think, I remember hearing something at a conference once that people, like, it was a well-known thing in conservation that it's like really hard to raise funding for insects in general because nobody likes cockroaches or like,
Yes.
creepy crawlies. And they found out that like people tend to really relate a lot more to animals that have two eyes that are on the front of their face
Ah,
and that are fuzzy and that have four legs. And I guess like honorarily, bumblebees like satisfy kind of two out of those three. So
right.
it's they get a little leg up on that regard. But I think it's just they're so even just the way they bumble around on these
Yeah.
flowers, like
Yeah.
they almost like slap into them when they like land. They're just you can't hate them. They're just so
No,
so so
I
great.
would agree. On the cuteness scale, they're up there for sure. Now, why should we care that the bumblebee population is declining? What's the big picture? What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean they're really critical in addition to just being like gems on the earth. They're really important pollinators as well. So they pollinate a lot of flowers, a lot of like flowers and crops that we eat as well. So a lot of crops like squash and tomatoes and a lot of fruits and vegetables and nuts, like a lot of the things on our food that is like on our plates that are like just like nutritious and delicious and like colorful.
Hmm.
Um, so they're really important for that. But I think more than that, even in North America and a lot of Europe, bumblebees are kind of one of the big things that holds a lot of the ecosystems together. So they're great pollinators for like wild landscapes as well. To give a great example, like in North America now we still have snow all over the ground mostly, but in a couple months or in a month or a couple weeks, we'll start to see the snows melt in the forest, and we'll start to see those the first spring flowers come out, those ephemeral flowers. And bumblebees are usually the first thing that pollinates them
Mm.
because bumblebees are so furry and because they can hold warmth like pretty well. They tend to be some of the first pollinators to come out, and so without bumblebees, we lose like all of those early flowers and a lot of the beauty in the land around us.
So you had a hashtag going for a while, too hot for bees. What does that mean?
Yeah, that was so we had a big paper, a big like research study come to its conclusion last year, and we found out that when we looked at bumblebees and how across North America and Europe they've been changing over time, we found that they've declined a lot across these two continents, and even the likelihood in the last kind of a little over 60 years, the likelihood of going to the exact same spot and looking for a bee now versus 60 years ago, in North America, you're almost half as likely to find a bee now.
Hmm.
So it's become a lot more difficult to find them. And we found that was linked in a large part to climate change, and more specifically to like how climate change, it brings not only this like gradual warming that I think we're pretty familiar with, but there's also this thing called climate chaos,
Hmm.
where I'm sure Texans are pretty familiar with it now, but climate change makes these extreme events, whether it's hot events or cold events or wet events or dry events, it makes these a lot more common and a lot more extreme.
Right, right,
Um, so we found, especially that warming was things were just getting too hot for bees, and it's not
right.
that it was like too hot for too long. It was like maybe there was a heat wave for a little too long in the summer, and that had a big impact on them.
I'm glad you brought up the word climate chaos, because I've had this conversation with my children as well. They think global warming was not the best term, right? When you live in Canada, the idea of something warm sounds like a good thing, right? And climate change still isn't as impactful as climate crisis, perhaps, or climate chaos. I'm wondering if we should change our language because it's happening. I heard a podcast the other day with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he said one of the problems is that you can't really see the evil, right? It's the timeline is so big that it's hard to grasp that it's happening. There's that other example too, if CO2 emissions or emissions from the vehicle like left a lingering stink, or if it was a hideous color, we might be inclined to drive less, right? It's
Yeah.
the not being able to see it. So what can we do if you're a kid at home? Because this is who it's going to impact the most. What would you suggest to them?
One of the most important things we need to keep in mind is that there's a lot of things we can do to help make the world a better place in climate change. There's a lot of things we can do to help protect animals in the face of climate change. But but really these things are in a lot of cases just band-aids. And, we can do a lot of things to help species survive climate change. But if we really want to protect them, we need to like nip it at the bud and really deal with the root of this climate change or chaos or this crisis that we're in right now. So it's really important to remember that that's the big thing that we need to take care of. And that's also, that's not an insurmountable goal. It just means, we really need to make it clear to our politicians and our representatives in government that this is something that is important to us. We need to exercise our right to vote, and keep in mind that big goal of like, this is something that, yeah, especially for the younger generation, something that's going to be really, really important moving forward. And then, of course, there are a host, after that, there are a host of other things that we can do. For bumblebees, for example, and other pollinators, one of the things I really like to drive home is something that's really easy. One of the things you can do to help these animals is create pollinator gardens in your house. It could be in your backyard, in your front yard. It could be if you have a balcony or a porch, just on there. It doesn't have to be something big, but some small area of habitat where you're planting local wildflowers. The Pollinator Partnerships has a great website and a great resource of local wildflowers in whatever kind of ecoregion or area you're in. And these create not only resources and food for bees and other pollinators, but also places for them to shelter from the heat. So when things do get too hot for bees, these pollinator gardens can be a great spot for them to weather the storm.
Yeah, I love pollinator gardens, the butterfly bushes, and there's lots of plants out there that can attract butterflies and bumblebees to the garden. Those are great projects to do with kids. It's not all doom and gloom. There's things that we can do.
Yeah, a lot of things, and I think there's a lot of people really care about it, and that's I think, like I mentioned earlier in conservation biology, that's the things you have to hold on to, right? It's there's definitely a light at the tunnel, a lot of things we can do, and we don't have a lot of time to address it, but we have a lot of really inventive people, a lot of up and coming scientists that I'm sure are watching this right now that will make a huge difference and will help save the world too.
Peter, you've also said that role models are very important motivators. Who were your role models growing up?
Oh yeah, great question too. I mean, I think some of my big role models I remember growing up were, of course, like David Attenborough. I remember like watching these like, all of these life of birds and plants and whatever, and having seen someone like, just be outside in nature and stay so curious about it and passionate about it was super cool for me. And of course, being able to explore alongside him like all of these like cool environments. I remember David Suzuki was like a really big influence for me as well. I used to like watch his shows on Sunday mornings or whenever they would play on the TV. And I remember I had a lot of role models who were not scientists necessarily, but who I just really appreciated their drive and their passion. People like Jay-Z or Kobe, like, growing up as a huge basketball fan and a huge like rap and music fan, like for me, it was like their passion and dedication. And, in science, I learned a lot. Like science is really difficult at times, and trying to emulate that same drive and motivation and passion, I think was actually really valuable for me too.
Do you see yourself as a role model for young Black scientists?
I hope so. Yeah. I didn't have like growing up. That's why I think, Jay-Z and Kobe and others were such big role models for me as well, because I didn't know any Black people who were scientists. And it was actually funny, like when I first went to university, my first undergrad, I started out in biomedical sciences, and I was going to be a medical doctor, because I knew Black people who were doctors, who were medical doctors, but I didn't know any who were like passionate about the outdoors or conservation. And so I hope that, I kind of represent that a little bit. I really enjoy science communication. And one of the reasons I really enjoy it is because I love to talk about it. I love to think like when I was growing up in high school or grade school, it would have meant a lot to see somebody really passionate about this to me at that time. So I hope that I'm a role model. I know I'm not perfect, but I hope that people are inspired a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, role models and diversity, it's so important. You hear that all the time. Every child wants to see themselves, even Kamala Harris, let's talk about American politics, even having, someone Black as the vice president of the United States. Those are big steps. And to look up to that it's pretty fantastic.
Definitely. Yeah. I still remember Barack Obama. My parents took us out of school that day for his first inauguration.
Yeah.
And that was big. That was huge. Yeah.
It's huge. I'm going to ask you why you were called Puffy Pete, because that's your
Yeah, that was
Instagram handle, right?
yeah, that's my Instagram handle. And that started out actually for the longest time, for I think about 8 years of like most of my undergrad and grad school. I had the biggest afro. And so it was the most recognizable thing. People would always be like messaging me like from randomly in the university, just, hey, I just saw you walk outside, because I was the only person with an afro like that at the time. So it was Puffy Pete. That was the handle. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, I've actually looked at Puffy Pete on Instagram, and you went to Kruger National Park. You have some great photos of animals. Tell me about that. Why were you there?
Yeah, that actually, recalling one of our previous questions too. That was one of the big perks of grad school. I got to go to Kruger National Park for a scientific conference actually. So it was the travel was paid to go, and for a week we
Wow.
were at this conference with just some of the brightest minds in conservation. The conference was actually called Species on the Move, and so it was all about species moving in the face of climate change or other threats. And so it was like super cool. I met so many like great friends there, and for a week it was just you would wake up, and the conference was designed so that you would wake up, do a safari, listen to like talks all day, and then you would do like a sunset safari afterwards. It was amazing.
Amazing. Those safaris are, I just went to Tanzania last January and did 4 or 5 days of a safari. They're
Mhm.
incredible. They're like, it's something you'll never forget, right? Seeing the
Yeah,
animals in the wild.
yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't, I remember driving from the airport, and when we landed in Kruger National Park in Sunkuza, we saw like these elephants start to cross the road and
Yes.
zebras. And I remember like seeing them from the very first moment we left the airport was just as cool as when we were leaving the airport, and seeing them on the way out. It did not get old at all.
You
It
don't
was,
tire of it. Elephants for me, I'll never forget the moment. I saw a
mhm.
family of elephants walking towards me, and the giraffes. I found the
Oh
giraffes
my God.
so beautiful, so
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah.
What was the coolest animal or photo you took? Anything?
Oh,
Oh,
so
it's
many.
hard. I know
Yeah.
it's hard.
I think one of the coolest moments was we saw two cheetahs actually at a watering hole, and that was just so cool because they were just chilling there for the longest time, and we sat for maybe half an hour or like 40 minutes, and then eventually they got up and walked like not too far away from the cars either. But that was really cool. Like that, those are still pretty like uncommon to see, and so it
Yeah,
was really neat to spend
yeah,
some time with them too.
that's amazing. Now, before I let you go, Peter, your name lately has been coming up in the same sentence as Leonardo DiCaprio. I have to ask, why? What's going on there?
Oh man, yeah, that was wild. That was so we had a big paper published last year in the journal Science. That was the one about bumblebees and climate chaos and things getting too hot for bees. And what was really cool was that we published this piece of scientific work, and it blew up way beyond science. And so media were really excited about it. Regular like people were so excited about it. It was on the Snapchat news at one point. Somebody was like
Oh,
looking through
wow.
that, and yeah, it was just in the most bizarre places. And then somehow Leonardo DiCaprio also saw it, and so he wrote this beautiful Instagram post about our work, and cited or like quoted one of my supervisors even. And so I that was just the craziest moment. Like a lot of scientists, do really awesome work,
Yeah.
and some of them publish in Science as well. But being cited by Leonardo DiCaprio is just that's the peak of my career. It's all
Yeah,
downhill
that's
from
pretty cool.
there.
That's awesome. That is so great. Well, Peter, thanks so much. I think this has been very inspirational. If I were a young kid, I would start to talk about conservation biology, and I really hope us humans can get our act together. I think we can.
I hope
Um,
so. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. How long until we have to address you as doctor?
Not too much longer.
Oh, great.
I'm hoping to finish this summer.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Peter. Thanks for doing this. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much for joining me once again on Spotlight with Scientists in School. If you would like to find out more information about all our programming, our community, and our classroom workshops, which are now virtual, our 4-week STEM club, or programs like Party Like a Scientist, please check out our website, scientistinschool.ca. And of course, we have all the rest: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. We are new to Instagram. Our handle is @sci_in_school. Thanks so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time on Spotlight.